super excited. We have an amazing group of people. We have Christine Zwerling, who is the Senior Director of Global Stock Plan Administration. And we have Rob Shaye, who is the founder and CEO of Fireside Finances. So excited to have this conversation around, how we can actually use equity for good. Traditionally, when you think of equity, right, and especially equity compensation, you think of, okay, buy and sell, but, there's also another dimension to that. And so wanted to just, dig in to that a little bit. But before we get started, I would actually love for the panelists to give their own intros because they can do it better than I ever could. So I'll kick it over to Christine. And Christine, would love for you to tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I manage stock plans. So employee stock purchase plans, restricted stock options, all that type of thing. I've been doing it for over 25 years. I have the gray hairs to show for it. And I'm at a company called Twilio. That's a tech company here, headquartered here in San Francisco. And I've been here for about 5.5 years managing our program. So that's how I met Kyle. And then that's also how I met Rob. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Rob.
Thanks, Christine. And hello, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Rob Shaye. I'm the founder and CEO of Fireside Finances, which is my own business where I run financial wellness programs for companies, including Twilio and some other companies. And the way I got kind of interested in that work is my mother was a teacher of over 35 years. So I say education is in my blood. And then I've always been a fan of personal finance and helping people optimize their finances. So I am a certified financial planner, but I don't manage any money. Instead, I focus solely on running educational programs for companies. And I particularly like working with charitable contributions and Overflow because I love seeing people donate to the causes that care most about them. Also in my blood, my father is an employee of Save the Children. And ever since I was a little kid, he would take me all over the globe and show me the impact that Save the Children and other nonprofits are making across the globe. So any chance I can get to help people donate to the causes that they care about, and then also do it in a tax-efficient way is right up my alley. So I'm looking forward to being here and chatting with everyone. Thanks.
That's so awesome. Every time I hear that story, Rob, I'm like, wow, like your dad's the longest tenured employee at Save the Children. That's really cool. And I'm Kyle Woumn, the VP of Product and Engineering here at Overflow. Overflow is a startup where our mission is to inspire the world to give. And we want to basically make giving frictionless across every major asset class. And so, yeah, I think we can jump right into, the panel questions. And also feel free, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to post in the chat. And we can someone will probably could answer them live, or we can even discuss them at the end of the panel. Cool. So the first question I actually want to ask Christine. So Christine, you've been in the equity professional game for a while. What prompted you to think about equity in a charitable way? And what challenges did you see around that within the workplace?
Yeah, no, great question. So I've been doing this forever, and forever people have wanted to donate stock. We have, I think the tech industry has been always wanting to donate and that type of thing, but it was always just really challenging. When I got to Twilio, we're part of the 1% program where it's 1% of time and money and all of that. And I was getting a lot of pressure from our Twilio.org side to help employees donate stock more easily. And what we were finding is our captive broker at the time, you had to fill out a form and fax it in. And it was almost harder to find a fax machine than to actually fill out the form. So that was really challenging. Sorry, my dog is really into donating stock too. So that was a challenge for us. And then we switched brokers. They had a more automated system, but you had to set up a DAF. in order to donate, even if it was just 2 shares. So it just was so challenging. So I was getting pressure from one side saying, help the employees donate stock. And then when I would tell employees what to do, they were like, no, no, thank you. I'll just, it's easier to just Venmo some money over to somebody. So, with that. And then when, Rob came in and was doing financial wellness for us, he was also saying, you should donate stock. And it was like, yeah, this is great. So we had that challenge. So, yeah, we were not looking for kind of that easy button for how to donate. And that's how we found Overflow.
I love that because, yeah, if you tell anyone these days to get a fax machine, I don't even know where to find a fax machine right now. If you told me to find one, maybe I'll go to like FedEx. But yeah, and that easy button to really lower the barrier of donating equity is huge, and it's something that a lot of people don't even know about. A lot of the sophisticated people may have a donor advised fund, like you said, like set up a donor advised fund, but it takes steps. If you just want to donate a few shares, there really wasn't that easy button. So no, thank you for sharing that, Christine. And then Rob, like for you, could you share a little bit more about the work that you do with Fireside Finances and how you see financial education furthering employee engagement and impact, especially considering that you work with a lot of companies?
Sure. Yeah, of course, Kyle. Thanks for that question. And again, with my business that I started, Fireside Finances, I'm all about education. So I am a personal finance enthusiast and nerd at heart. I stay up late, get up early, and I read about it. I follow all the blogs, read all the books I can. And I just love helping people and seeing the transformation that happens inside of people once they finally they wrap their head around their finances and they help their money really unlock their full potential and achieve their not only financial goals, but life goals. Because I always say that money is just a tool. It shouldn't be your goal, but it should help you achieve your life goals. And once people a lot of people have a fear of money, which is very justified, and maybe it wasn't something that they talked about in their household growing up. But once you start to see people get more comfortable with it and perhaps turn to their employers as a source of information and trusted education on the topic, you can start to see them, kind of let their guard down, ask really thoughtful questions, and just kind of process what role money plays in their lives. And you start to see, as employees go through this transformation, you start to see them have more positive sentiments towards their employer. They start to, I've seen very, very positive comments towards companies for thanking them for setting up workshops and sessions and taking an interest in their employees outside of work. So I think we all kind of know that employers are often turned to for things like educational sessions on, say, nutrition or mental wellness. Certainly your physical wellness, you're already inherently tied to your employer, but now employees are really turning to their employers for financial wellness as well. So if you think about it you can think about it from a business standpoint, or you can think about it from, this is just the right thing to do for our employees. But really, it's a long play, right? So financial wellness is going to pay dividends for, if you can excuse the financial pun there, it'll really pay dividends for the employers in the long run, right? Because employees start to feel more engaged, they start to feel more connected. And I always encourage folks to bring their spouses and plus ones and partners in too, because financial planning is a family affair. And once people do that, they start to see, oh, not only does Twilio care about me, but they also care about my family and they care about my spouse. And there's a lot more, it improves employee recruitment and improves employee retention. And I'll kind of leave it with one of the quotes. I ran some workshops for Spotify, and we had some nice quotes. We always gather feedback. One young woman said, "This was great. I'm a first-generation woman who grew up living day to day. I don't have people close to me who can help me make these kinds of decisions." And then another employee, a young gentleman, said, "This is the best soft benefit learning experience I've received since I've started at Spotify." So even with a small dose of financial wellness, you can see a lot of return on that type of investment for your employees.
Wow, no, I love that, Rob. First of all, I think you and Chris Sawyer on our team, who's also on this webinar, would be great friends. He loves finance. This is what he does in his free time. I think y'all would be great friends. But I love that point around the financial education and how it also like ties into the to family. And then Sia, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Sia also mentioned that like how it could be a dinner combo later as well. And for a lot of people too, especially me when I got my first job and especially in tech, like I had never actually owned stock before. And so with a lot of people coming in, that equity component or even just finances, this could be, for people's first jobs, but they may not have learned that. Schools don't really do a good job at teaching about finance. So I think, once people are actually making, real money, in the real world, that financial education piece is so critical because people get it and they don't know what to do with it, how to save for their future, and so I think that's amazing, and I love that. I've actually sat in on one of Rob's sessions with Twilio actually, and the way he breaks things down is just like so clear that a 5-year-old could understand it, and I just really think the value of financial education is huge in the workplace. It helps drive that employee engagement. And so for Christine, what I wanted to see is, and Rob touched on this a little bit, but, and you also kind of alluded to it, but would love to like dive deeper on, what Twilio has done specifically to give Twilions the education and technology needed to use their equity for good.
Yeah, no, it's great. And we kind of baby stepped to get here, right? We started out with, we have our nonprofit arm, the Twilio.org. And then we had Rob come in and just doing general financial wellness, because exactly what you said, we have a lot of early in career people that this is the first time they've even had any real wealth or just anything beyond, just paying their bills, where they maybe had some extra money or their overflow funds. And I just learned that's how you came up with the name of your company. How they had that to spend, and they didn't know what to do with it. And what would freak me out the most is I used to do in-person office hours. I was kind of like Lucy from Peanuts, where I would have a little sign and I'd sit in our lunchroom and said, equity office hours, just to answer basic questions, because I found people were so scared to ask in a group session. They didn't want to be the dumb one. They also, trying to set up one-on-one sessions, just my whole day would have been just with employees. So I started doing that, and it was great. Employees would come by, but I found they would ask questions like, do I put more money in the ESPP or the 401k? I was like, I am not qualified to answer that question. And it's like, so then it was like, well, let me help you, give you the steps to find a financial advisor. And then it was, people were afraid to do anything, and they just really had that fear of doing anything. So they did nothing. And I would sit with them sometimes and just help them set up their brokerage account. And I know a lot of other stock folks had the same thing, where they set it up and they go in and you look at it and they're sitting on real wealth, and they're not doing anything with it because they're afraid to do the wrong thing. So that's when we went out and tried to find, who can help us with education that doesn't have like we didn't want some, a broker. A lot of the brokerage firms will do education, but they also do that so that they can get your book of business, right? They want your employee names. So we wanted somebody that was just not related to, any kind of firm, and just did education. And when we found Rob, and then when you hear his background, it's just like, well, yeah, of course, it's perfect. That's exactly what we want. And it had a similar feel to the Twilion. So from there, we started just doing education sessions for people to just learn exactly what you said, kind of those baby steps of just, even outside of equity, just how do you set up a budget, all of that type of stuff. But then, weaving in, equity education, just so they knew what they had. And then when we were able to roll out Overflow, we had Rob come in and do a session with the employees of why you would want to donate stock versus donating money. What's the difference between, everybody has the, you get the messages from friends or family that somebody's in need and they have a fund set up, and, you could just, quickly donate, $20 here and help them out. Why donating one share of stock to a charity was actually better than that, and how it would be better, for your money and for, the people you're trying to help. And he just really walked through all of that for the employees. So it really helped them understand this is easier. And then the Overflow system is just so much easier than going through our other brokers that we had where, it just was much more challenging and it just had too many barriers, right? If you only have 5 minutes to do something and you can't get it done, not even 5 minutes, I'm sure you guys have statistics on that. But they would walk away and not do it. And then also, like, just personally, I've tried to donate stock to a charity that I like, and you have to call the charity, and then you have to call your broker, and you have to do all these authorizations, and it's really, really time consuming. And if you're going to donate like, $10,000 worth, that's easy to do. But if you just want to donate 1 or 2 shares, because that's what you're comfortable doing, why would you go through all of that? Again, it's like if I could just do $20 through, one of the other systems, like maybe I'll just do that. So this really allowed our employees to do that, and we're actually working with Rob right now to kind of do a refresh on our education on donating and kind of targeting audiences too, right? Because it's a different audience when you're targeting maybe some of our like the VP plus folks versus like the normal rank and file people, the little people. So kind of tailoring some different sessions to what people need, and then just making sure we just try to, like, we have the trading windows here where the employees can trade during certain periods. Those apply to all employees. So when we open the window, to reminding them, hey, don't forget, you can also donate stock during this time, and here's an easy way to do it. So those are some of the things that we've got out there to help people. And then really partnering with our Twilio.org foundation side for doing learning sessions, kind of making sure that stock education is included in what they're putting out, and then I include Overflow. So we're just really partnering there to have that all together, because we have found, this might be one of your questions coming up, but we have found that employees want to do good, and they want to donate, and they want to do this, and it makes them feel good. But they then feel bad when it's really hard to do. So when we can give them something that's easy to do what they want to do, they feel better about themselves and what they're doing with their finances.
I love that, Christine. So a lot of things to unpack there. At Overflow, we fundamentally believe that people are intrinsically wired to give, and that, people get, that satisfaction when they are generous. And so, making it easy is important. And then on the education piece, being able to take that, iterative approach into your program. And I'm sure there's so many different like departments that are, involved, from you with on the equity side to like benefits, et cetera, to like coordinate that. But I know that's like massive value to, your employees, and, gives them that confidence, because it's one thing to be, to want to do something, but to be stifled because you don't have that proper education. And so, the education piece is so important. And I want to kick it back over to you, Rob, and just to see like what changes have you been seeing in terms of how employees, think about charitable giving, and, what should companies, nonprofits, and individuals kind of be prepared for as, equity compensation. It's been around for a while, but, tying that into charitable giving and that becoming mainstream.
Yeah, wanted to kick it off by echoing one of the points that both Christine and Kyle, you both made, is that people are inherently wired to give, and that, Christine, you heard from your employees that they want to give. And I've seen this too, and Kyle, you asked about some of the changes or some of the trends that I'm seeing. People really, really want to give, and people are giving. And a lot of times people just don't know that they could be giving in a slightly more efficient way. A lot of people don't know when I talk to them about, did you know you could donate equity, donate appreciated securities? If you say it like donate appreciated securities, people kind of look at you like, what do you have, 6 heads, right? But because if you speak to them in plain English and say, oh, you could give away some of your shares instead of giving cash or instead of putting it on your credit card, you get a bigger tax benefit and the charity gets more. So it's a win-win. The only one that loses in that situation is the IRS, because the charity doesn't have to pay the capital gains. But most of us don't, mind too much if the IRS loses a little bit on capital gains taxes. So one thing that I taught at the Coast Guard Academy in the classroom, and I taught a semester-long course on personal finance for Coast Guard Academy cadets who are between the ages of 18 and 22, like most college-age students. And one of our lessons was budgeting, and I would have them create a detailed budget. We would have line items, and I would talk about charitable giving as if you want to include this in your budget, feel free to. It sits in a different priority for different people. Some people fund it immediately in their budget. Other people fund it kind of at the end of their budget if they have money left over. But as the teacher, I would get to see all the budgets. And when you get to kind of peek inside someone's finances, it's a big responsibility because it's a very personal side of their life. And I was just amazed when I saw the amount of students and that are charitably inclined. And these were students, the stipend at the Coast Guard Academy, ranges from about $100 for a freshman all the way up to like $300 for a senior a month. So it's not like they have a lot of disposable income. And when I would see budgets come across my desk with $300 a month in earnings, and 10% of that, every month was going without question to a charity, I was super impressed. So, and that's not unique to the Coast Guard Academy. When I talk to employees and I see their budgets too, especially, I've just been very kind of impressed and inspired to see the younger demographic really have a high propensity to give. And then when you can tell them, hey, have you heard about donating securities? And now, thank goodness, there's an easy way to do it. It's as easy as firing up Venmo and sending someone some money. And before we joke around, I think Christine and Kyle, you've heard the story of about 15 years, maybe longer than that, 20 years ago, I tried to donate some Harley Davidson shares to a nonprofit in New York City. And boy, that was a beast of a process about writing letters to Fidelity and calling charities and getting account numbers and writing a letter of instruction. And I remember the first time I saw the Overflow demo, I was like, wow, it's really this easy. And thank goodness it is. So kind of a roundabout way to say that one of the trends and one of the biggest things I've seen is people want to give, they are giving, and they are very open to the idea of giving in a more tax efficient way. So when you tell people there's a way out there to reduce your taxes and optimize and give from a side stream of income that's not your day-to-day budget, people are very excited about that. And I think the second point I'll make before wrapping up here is that employees are starting to kind of expect this from their employers. And when we have employers out there with very robust, Twilio has a matching benefit program for their employees. I used to work at BlackRock. They used to match $3,000 a year of charitable contributions. One of the companies that my friend works at matches $10,000 a year per employee, and they triple your donation. That's like, these are really strong benefits that companies are offering, and employees don't necessarily understand how to maximize that benefit. But if you get that benefit, everyone at Twilio should really be taking advantage of that $500 matching benefit, because that's a free $500 that's non-taxable to you. And it's really, you get to direct where it goes to a charity of your choosing. So once people start to understand their benefits better and they start using different types of benefits, they're using a physical wellness benefit, a financial wellness benefit, a mental wellness benefit, they really become more engaged. They feel more pride in their company. And it's just kind of a win all around.
Thanks for sharing that, Rob. And, to your point too, like seeing other people's, when you were teaching and you were seeing people's budgets and seeing that, they were giving. One thing I just recently thought about, and you kind of alluded to this, is that also the job market is, especially on the talent side, at least, talent has so many options, right? When it comes to who to work for. And these days, a lot of prospective employees, when they're looking for new opportunities, they want to look for a company that's purpose driven, that they know, is aligned with their values, and is also charitable and empowers them to do, charitable activities. And so it's a huge advantage on the employer side to be able to, have these kind of like programs in place. And so now I want to toss it back to Christine for our last question of the day before we open up the Q&A. And I want to see, where do you see equity compensation in the coming years? You've been in the game for a while, and you've seen, and that is with all respect, with the utmost respect, Christine. Like you are experienced, but you've been in the game for a while, and where do you see equity comp going in the next few years, and how do you see that advancing employee engagement and purpose?
Yeah, I think equity comp is not going to go away. It's never, every once in a while, you'll see your news or somebody saying like, "Your stock options are dead" or whatever, but it is not. There are, at least especially in the Silicon Valley, the tech area, there are so many pre-IPO companies right now, and they are just waiting. They're watching the markets. Waiting for, the first kind of unicorn to go out, and, the IPO market is going to take off again. It's just, they're just sitting waiting. So equity comp is going to be there. It is going to always be a way to compensate employees. The companies I work for always believe strongly in equity because they hire me and to run their programs, and they spend a lot of money and time, granting equity broadly and making sure employees understand it. But the philosophy is also right. If you own something, you take better care of it, right? So let's get some employee owners out there, and employees start feeling like owners when they get that grant. They are looking at the stock price, they're looking at the value. What can I do to increase the value? So equity comp is not going to go away. It's just going to grow. I think, this is where my old lady hat on. Years ago, they changed some of the accounting rules around equity, and so that did kind of pull back how broadly companies were granting. But I think it's been around long enough that companies have opened it up again and are granting broadly and are not looking to, I participate in all kinds of salary surveys and that kind of thing. And I don't see a lot where they're pulling back how deeply within the company they're granting. Twilio does grant to everybody. We grant an RSU to anybody who comes to work here, from, your early in career first job, answering the phones or doing that phones. I don't know who, yeah, but anything like that, to, obviously the CEO, CFO, the E-suite people. They all get some kind of equity. They can participate. We have an employee stock purchase plan where they can buy shares separately. So I don't think equity comp is going to go away. I think what I see is we have been sophisticated enough with how we grant equity and managing the programs that we're now looking at what else can we do with them. And that's why I think things like Overflow, where you're making it easier to accomplish other goals with your equity and looping that into education, is kind of the next step of where I see the equity programs going. We have, a lot of great tools out there. All of the brokers have a system to manage your equity, how your, employees are engaging with it, and all of that. They all have something that's pretty good. It's what you do with it beyond that. What education do you provide to your employees? What, corporate goals do you have to fulfill that? Twilio has always had, and our Jeff Lawson, our founder, and the other founders have always had a very, very strong giving back to the community and giving back to the world philosophy. And I think a lot of the corporate founders these days do. It's, it's kind of one of those like, those millennials. But, historically, we've found that the millennials do want to give back to their communities much more. It's really ingrained in what they do. So they're demanding it more. And I think it does become a recruiting tool. When we're out there talking to people, it's like, hey, what does the company do? What are your benefits? It's like, oh, and we also have Twilio.org. Here's all the good they do. And here are some of the programs we have set up where you can do it too. We have, paid time off to volunteer. We have, just all of those. And I think that becomes like, oh, you just really walk the walk and not just putting tools out there. So I do find as companies are growing, and tech companies and all of that, they're still going to be granting equity broadly. They're keeping, from what I've been seeing, and at least the people I've talked to, it feels like people are being pretty vanilla. I don't see a lot of crazy, like changing the kind of equity vehicles people are using, that type of thing. Keeping it, pretty simple. It's hard enough to help, as we know, although help employees understand what equity is in general. Why make it complicated too? Because they're not going to get the benefit of it. They're not going to understand what you're doing, unless you're going to put a ton into education, which, do you really want to do that, or do you want to spend it hiring 5 more engineers? So I don't know. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, that was super helpful. And I just want to say the work that you two do is super important. And I know like the people that you all serve definitely are appreciative of the work that y'all do. And so with that, I want to open the floor up to Q&A. Feel free to ask your question, over the mic, or you can also type it in the chat if you don't feel comfortable speaking. Okay, CR raised his hand.
I hate awkward silences. So if only to break the silence that I felt I need to while I'm working at the same time. Anyway, thank you so much all for your time. Hey, just curious, and I'm sure the Overflow team will appreciate this as well. For the practitioners out on the field, whether it's Rob with the coaching or Christine with yourself at Twilio, what do you think are some of the barriers between this new way of thinking about equity, where traditionally, even for people that have had access to it for a while, they think of the value that accrues for them over vesting schedules over 4 years typically. But when you turn around now and go, no, actually, you can put that to work immediately to causes that you care for, it's a mindset shift, right? So it's almost like you're making them think differently about what they have ownership of. So my question is, from either one of your perspectives, as the folks sort of preaching this gospel out in the field, what are some of the barriers you have to cross with the people individually and the teams that you have to teach about how to enact this and employ this? What are some of the barriers that are common across the board? And when do you see that light bulb go off of, oh yeah, this now I have to think of this equity in a totally different way. This is not something that I only have full control of over 4 years or after those golden handcuffs come off. Does that question make sense at all?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in first, and then I'll throw it over to Rob because this is much more his question. But
sure.
I think what I got from when you asked the question is the part that resonated to me is it gets them to think. And a lot of times they ignore their equity until they have to do something with it. Then they think about it. When we roll out something like Overflow, it actually makes them think. Or we roll out an education session, they actually are like, oh, I should do something. Here's what I can do. So with that, I'll throw it over to Rob because it's much more your world, I think, in this part.
Yeah, and a fantastic question. I really enjoyed hearing you articulate that. I think the greatest barrier that I see is there's a baseline understanding of our tax code, some math. It's not super complicated math, but there's math in there. Mm-hmm. Terms like what's the standard deduction, what's an itemized deduction, what is a deduction, what's a charitable contribution, what's a long-term capital gain. Those terms can be extremely intimidating to people. I actually like those terms because this is my world, but those terms are very scary to people who have, you say taxes, people just like cringe, right? But so those terms can be very intimidating to people. So we have to explain those and get people to understand at least the very basics of that. And then then the light bulb, you said, when does the light bulb go off? Then the light bulb goes off on, oh, now I understand why it makes more sense for me to donate 3 shares of my equity as opposed to just charging it to my credit card or as opposed to just writing a check. And that's when people start to realize, I want to give already, but now I can do it in a more tax efficient manner. And I think that's when you kind of see that light bulb go off for people they're also happy because along the way, they've learned now what a standard deduction is and how their mortgage interest impacts their take-home salary and this and that. So it's kind of like you feel better when you learn something new, and that happens along the way. And then I think the other thing is that one of the things that we've been able to do as well, like for the people who are still a little leery of parting with their equity, one of the behavioral finance tricks or hacks I use to encourage people is start tracking, as opposed to just, a lot of people track their net worth. They use a tool like Mint or Personal Capital or Excel, and they track, how much money. It's so important to decouple net worth from self-worth. But people track their net worth, right? But as a column in net worth or as a line item in net worth, I like to encourage people to track how much money have you donated to charity. So, it's going to, by definition, donations to charity will decrease your net worth. But if you include it back in to your net worth and say, oh, last year I donated $10,000 to charity, or I donated 10 shares to charity, then people start to think about it like this is a good thing, and it is actually contributing to my financial goals and the world, making the world a better place, as opposed to just not losing something anymore. And I think that's one of those barriers that helps people kind of overcome that maybe antiquated approach to parting with your money. And they start to realize I'm not really parting with it. I'm just spending it on something that exactly I want, and something that's going to pay dividends for other people in the future. So great question. And I hope that helps a little bit.
It does. And I appreciate both of you for answering it. And I think an important point you made, which is underlying, I suppose, all of Overflow's mission, right, is that you're not just parting with your money, but you sort of now have ownership of a good cause out there. And that in and of itself is probably a pretty nice bragging rights that I haven't seen Kyle's product roadmap, but I bet that's coming down.
It's on the product roadmap. That's one thing. We're like, how can we get more people involved to share the good work that they're doing? And, giving is personal along with like finances, right? So people, they don't like to, I guess, brag and say how much they gave, but I think that to show that, they're giving to good causes is huge. One thing our CEO Vance even talks about is like with like the Forbes list, right? You have the Forbes list that shows, the people in the world with the highest net worth. But what if we show like the people that gave the most, or their net worth in comparison to what they've given? It will show a holistic picture, right? As opposed to, net worth. That's
and not so much the money that they gave, just how hyperactive they are in giving and connect, and how many people they're giving touches. I think that's a very powerful thing. Anyway, that's enough for me. Love what y'all are doing, and thanks for answering the question.
No, thank you for jumping in and engaging with us. I really appreciate that. I want to see if there's any other questions that we can help answer. Okay. Well, I appreciate all of you for joining the webinar in this panel today about equity for good. Huge thank you to Rob and Christine for participating, and our Overflow team that put this together. Zoe, Anna, Jose, thank you all so much. And what we're going to do, we want to continue doing things like this, building a community. We'd love for the Bay Area people to do like in-person events. And so our team's going to be following up with everyone on this call just to connect, get to know you, and see how Overflow could, potentially serve you, whether you're a nonprofit, an individual, or a corporation. So thank you all so much, and we will talk to you all soon.